Ratification Board. The time is 9 a.m. on Friday, August 7th. Then we'll, I guess, do the pledge. Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure.
Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 2, discussion of possible action to excuse board member absences, if any. Board member Ripley is giving us notice that he couldn't be here today, and so I'd entertain a motion to dismiss his absence or excuse his absence.
Chair Bolton, I make a motion that we excuse Mr. Ripley's absence.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. Number 3, remarks from the chair. I would just like to think we have members of the foundation that are here today to give us a presentation. And so we thank you for coming down, and we look forward to hearing that. And I don't have any other remarks. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to? Okay, very good. We're on to agenda item number 4, general comments from visitors on non-agenda items. And we do not have anybody who signed up for comments. So now we go to agenda item number 5, ratification of the official record of the May 15th, 2026 board meeting as approved for posting on the website by the secretary of the board. So the meeting minutes are within the meeting materials. Any questions? I would entertain a motion to approve the board minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. Agenda item number 6, final orders and surrenders in the matter of, well, you see the complaints there, and if anybody has any questions or comments, otherwise we'll move on to the committee reports. And as far as the executive committee, I think it speaks for itself. The report is on page 23. So, and if anybody has any questions or comments, otherwise we'll move to agenda item number 8, the report by Budget and Finance Committee with Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Chair Bolton. Just want to thank, of course, our amazing team. Our staff has worked very hard on preparing the budget that they'll be presenting today. The report that you see in front of you does represent the meeting quite well, and look forward to your feedback or any questions you may have as we go through that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Agenda item number 9, report by Education Licensing Committee, Board Member Castro.
Thank you. We had a pretty extensive meeting, about an hour long, and it was pretty fruitful. A lot of the discussion was regarding the second exposure draft, and we'll be going through that with the foundation, the people here, and also just seeing what changes were made, and just trying to honestly just trying to get everybody on the board to know what the changes that were made. And hopefully the representatives from the foundation can shed a little bit more light on that as well, and we'll follow up with questions. So I will wait for that as well. But that was really the bulk of it, and hopefully the meeting minutes and stuff, they reflect what we went through. So
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Board Member Castro? Okay, moving to agenda item number 10, report by TREC and TALCB Joint Audit Committee. That is Mr. Ripley's committee. But Ms. Williams can speak to anything from the meeting.
There we go. Good morning.
Morning.
There we are. Yes, the Joint Audit Committee met on July 21st and also July 30th. They had two meetings. So the first meeting, McConnell Jones, our internal auditor, presented the draft 27 internal audit plan, the 26 internal audit report, and disclosure statements and the charter. There was discussion back and forth on the 21st about additional options for the FY27 audit plan, and that's why we had the second meeting on July 30th, and she provided a second draft, and I'll be presenting that as well later on in the meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions for Ms. Williams? Okay. Now we go to agenda item number 11, report by AMC Advisory Committee by Martha Gale Reed-Lynch.
Thank you. We had a 22-minute meeting. All of our members were present, and we reviewed proposed amendments presented by Kat Santos, General Counsel, and it was basically about quadrennial review. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Reed-Lynch? Then we will go to staff reports. Agenda item number 12, morning executive director.
Good morning, Chelsea Buckholtz, Executive Director. It's 9:07 and we're clicking right along to agenda item 12. I'm impressed. Thanks for being here together today. It seems like it's been a while since we've been together. I think that's just summer months, how that works. But I also wanted to welcome a few guests that we had. Peter Fontana and Randy Flowers are here from the Appraisal Foundation. We'll be hearing from them a little bit later this morning. I also wanted to welcome our newest addition to the TALCB staff. We've recently hired Leslie Levy as our new managing attorney, replacing Ren, who you'll remember from past meetings. She joins us from the Department of Family and Protective Services, bringing an extensive litigation experience along with recent experience implementing a new case management system, not unlike our new license management system in the Realm portal. She's not with us this morning, but is watching virtually, so I just wanted to make sure you knew of that addition and to welcome her. A few updates that I wanted to mention this morning. First, as you know, and have discussed in your committee meetings, the AQB recently released its second exposure draft, proposing significant changes to appraiser credentialing, including continuing education requirements and introducing new pathways to gain experience. The original 30-day comment period has come and gone, but the AQB has extended that through the end of August. After receiving feedback. So that's good news there. The appraisal subcommittee audit is officially underway. For those of you that have not experienced an ASC audit just yet, the ASC comes to every state and audits every state on a 2-year cycle. And they review both our appraiser program and our AMC program for compliance with ASC policy statements. This is a very heavy lift for our staff, but there's nothing that the board needs to do. The ASC has sent their initial document request to us, and we are collecting that information to provide to them. We will have 4 ASC members on site in Austin from September 14th through 17th that we'll host and work with through that time. So we'll keep you posted all along the way. Practicum updates. The TALCB now has 2 practicum courses, creating a new pathway for appraising aspiring appraisers to gain qualifying experience. One course offered through Appraisal U was approved by the AQB. The other, Texas MPAT, was reviewed and approved by TALCB staff. So together, these two programs give Texans additional opportunities to fulfill their appraisal experience requirements, and that's exciting. I know we've been talking about that for a very, very long time. The Aero Fall Conference takes place next month at the end of September, 28th through 30th, Monday through Wednesday. It's in Clearwater, Florida. 3 of us will be attending, myself, Melissa, and then also Martha Gale Reed Lynch. So we will come back with all the information we acquire at that meeting and share it with you. We're excited about that. Okay, on to more general updates relating to the entire agency. When we'll start with Realm, of course. We've made great progress on stabilizing after the rollout of the Realm portal, which began last December. So we are, 9 months in. At the last board meeting, you asked for a dedicated staff for TALCB customer service. And with that, which we did add, the average hold time for the board in recent months, really in July, is 2 minutes and 13 seconds. So we're back. The numbers you see in your materials are for June, so they don't look quite as good, but the trend you see in June has continued in July. Additionally, board emails are being addressed as they come in. So I also wanted to just brag that in August, our hold time so far is under a minute. The last 3 days, our hold time has been 13 seconds, 18 seconds, somewhere in there. So I can officially say that we are recovered from the heavy lift that was the rollout of the Realm portal from a customer service perspective, for sure. We've also signed a contract with Acela, our vendor for the Realm portal, to provide post-implementation support for Realm. This will allow us to handle outstanding tickets and ongoing system improvements. It will be paid primarily through TREC, but I'm mentioning it to you here because we have submitted an application for an ASC grant to cover some specific items related to the board.
How is the portal running?
The portal is running well. When we reported to you, I would say January and February, it was hard to identify items that were working as they should, to be clear. And we have clicked through all of those tickets and made improvements really daily, weekly, monthly, so that now people are able to do their business on the portal. We still have a learning curve. We have people renewing for the first time in the system every month. That will be the case for a 2-year cycle. But our staff is more equipped to support them. Our customer service team has extensive experience on how to help people navigate. We have FAQs online, we have videos online that are helpful. And then I also think it's helpful to have ambassadors in the field. Folks who have navigated, they know how to do that, and then are sharing that with their communities. So anytime you do something for the first time, it's a challenge. And I think we still have some work to do to make it more intuitive and to improve the user experience. That's what this kind of enhanced support contract will do through Acela. But it's running, and it's running well. Few other statistics I want to just point you to that are in your materials. One is that our applications for new license holders is up 28% from last year. This is just something we watch. We don't, as you know, go out and recruit and try to kind of control what that number looks like, but it's something we watch and are excited to see. All of those are being processed in a timely manner. We're also able to timely process enforcement cases, and we're averaging about 96 days to completion, which is well within our 180-day goal. We have 3 cases that are over a year old, but all with documented special circumstances in compliance with the ASC policy statements.
Of those three, how many are litigation?
How many are litigation? I should have had that off the top of my head. 3. One last thing I wanted to mention before I ask for questions is about AI. We are wading into the waters of using AI. We're using it on the customer service side, primarily really just with Trek. But on the board side, we're using it in our reporting. And this is to identify patterns, discrepancies, and in reconciliation. So this significantly affects our efficiency in reporting, and we will leverage it wherever it makes sense to do so. But of course, keeping in mind the value of the human mind and the human touch all along the way. We're not letting it think for us. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
On AI, have you used it in any of the business budgets to ensure calculations and accuracy and formulas?
You know, I don't believe we have, but that's an excellent use of it. And we're going to take that back. I have a feeling someone's taking a note right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yes. I won't keep us here all day, I promise. First thing on the customer service, whoop, whoop, that's awesome. So if we go back and we look at where we were and where we are today, that is incredible. So, I mean, and it's a testament to the commitment of our team. You guys are amazing. Worked around the clock to get those numbers down. I have not received a single complaint personally from any user. In fact, I always in the community take an opportunity to ask whether they're Trek or TALCB, hey, how's it going with that new portal, type thing. And I have not gotten any negative feedback. So I really want to thank the team for making that happen because, I mean, you guys had a heavy lift there for real. And that's very impressive of where we are today. So
Well, and
thank you.
to just comment there, I want to make sure to say that this is a whole agency effort. And, there was a part of me that wondered if this would be a 2-year challenge because of a 2-year renewal cycle. And it couldn't be a 2-year problem. So we have worked as an agency across the agency in our IT department to reduce the challenges of our license holders and with licensing to reduce the time it takes to get a license so that no one is calling and asking. In customer service to be timely with our call time and also to provide support that doesn't require a call back to give good support so they get it done in one call. It's really across the entire agency. I'm also touched by the number of people who have worked outside of their typical duties in order to contribute to the cause. And I'm just really proud of our 141 folks who work here for contributing to the success of Realm.
Thank you. And thank you for your leadership. I know it wasn't hard, getting through all that. But I appreciate the fact that you stayed the course. You were very focused. No matter what came your way, you stayed the course and saw it through. And thank you, because I know that was a heavy lift for you as our leader, as the leader of the agency as well. So thank you for that.
Thanks for that.
Let's see. I wanted to ask, so you mentioned there were 2 practicum providers currently that's able to service the state. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but if it would be great to have them maybe give us a little information about what they do, how they can serve Texas, what does that look like, whether it's in a board meeting or in our November. We'll talk about that later as far as adding things to the workshop, but I'd love to just kind of get a good sense of how they're going to serve our state.
Absolutely. We can also share that with you electronically.
Oh, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. And lastly, I just had a question on the license holders. So our current license holders, do we have any gaps in the state of Texas that are not currently being serviced well for our consumers? So for example, are there certain zip codes? Are there certain, that sort of thing? I just want to see if we have any gaps in particular. And if so, can that information be shared with the board just so we kind of keep an eye on that to make sure all of our consumers are being serviced to the best of our ability?
Sure. I believe there are places that have fewer than ideal appraisers, but I don't believe that there are huge pockets of Texas that don't have any ability to get an appraisal done. Just in our wide open spaces, they're fewer and far between.
Yeah.
But that's true everywhere. We can get you some more specific information.
That would be
on
great
I
if-
think we can get that. Can we? Ish? Kind of.
Kind of. Okay. No, I appreciate just any information you can share on that. And it may even be best for me to, I don't know, talk to some of the associations that are in those areas. Because what I'm trying to get a sense for is for the state of Texas, like, are there certain areas where there's a drought where people are having to wait an extensive amount of time to be serviced? And if so, I want to kind of keep my eye on that as a public member, just to make sure the consumers are being serviced as timely as possible based on, I mean, I know there's some, we need to, we can't recruit, as you said, to get appraisals in that area, but.
I can tell you that the challenge you just mentioned is traditionally more of an issue when the housing market is stronger than it is today. Right now we have appraisers working less than they say were during COVID.
Yeah, that's
and that's just because of the nature of the housing market. So what was more of a challenge 4 or 5 years ago is less of a challenge today.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I just got to figure out how I can maybe then track the trends over time, just to kind of keep my eye on, like, because you're absolutely right. That's a great point. It depends on the housing market too. So thank you for that. I just had to think about how to keep my eye on that. But thank you. That's all I had.
Anything else?
I would also like to commend you and your staff for a tremendous recovery from a real challenge. And you guys have brought it back in action. I couldn't be more happy that the job that y'all did and continue to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience and for giving us the time to make it happen.
Well, and I also thank you for the transparency. I mean, we knew that we had a challenge on our hands, and you also kept the board apprised as to the progress in dealing with that and the setbacks and then getting back to normal. And so we really appreciate that too. So I think the board had a good understanding through the process where we were.
That's great.
Well done.
Thanks.
Okay. Kat, are we looking to push 18 next? Yeah. Okay. So next, we're going to, instead of going to executive session, we're going to go to agenda item number 18, presentation from the foundation regarding the State Harmonization Task Force updates on the appraisal industry and the Appraisal Qualifications Board's second exposure draft. Mr. Flowers, Mr. Fontana from Montana.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be here today. We'll just give you a little background on what the State Harmonization Task Force and the Appraisal Foundation are, what we're up to. There's a lot going on in the appraisal space, both congressionally and at the foundation. So a year and a half ago, our chair stood up this task force to try to look at the states that have overlays over the minimum criteria that the Appraiser Qualification Board sets out for licensure. In some of the states, there's an incredible number of overlays to include additional hours over the recommended hours by the AQB. In our analysis, and you just spoke about it here a minute ago about the shortage of appraisers in some areas, we're predicting that with the advent of the new UAD 3.6, the new form that residential appraisers are going to have to engage in by November 2nd, we're looking at a 15 to 20% reduction in people just retiring because they don't want to use the new technology based. And that's put us in a little bit of a crisis situation. And so there's, especially in rural states like Texas, not in the urban areas, but like in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, we rely on the VA also to give us statistics to back this up. And so in the VA, they have 170 unassigned cases in Alaska they can't get anybody to take. those veterans need to have those properties valued and to ensure that they can use their veterans benefits. And so Maine is the same way. Southern Colorado is the same way. And so if we lose 15 to 20% of our licensed appraisers because of the new form from Fannie and Freddie, and because of people are just going to retire, because the average age of our appraiser population today is almost 60 years old. And we have solid statistics on that. The FHA gathers the birth date of their appraisers, and they have 30,000 appraisers on their roster. They actually gather the birth dates. Their average age on the FHA roster is 61. What we're doing at the foundation with the State Harmonization Task Force is, when they asked me if I would chair this committee, I said I would do it under one circumstance, that we do direct engagement with the states. We were going to try to do this by going to the AERO conference, which I get to serve on with Melissa. I'm a board member of the Association of Appraiser Regulatory Officials, and Melissa is one of my colleagues and board members, and happy to serve with her. But what we weren't going to do was just go to these conferences and try to get a message out and ensure that states would take that back and try to consider changing some of their laws, rules, and regulations. The state of Texas should be commended, because basically you apply the AQB criteria almost by reference. There's only 9 states that call that out in their statute, that whatever the criteria is, that's what they're going to apply. They're not going to have any overlays. And so they adopt that by reference. Texas basically does that, and you should be commended for that. And so as we travel from state to state to meet with the boards, in the last year and a half, there's been so much more information. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act now is passed, which puts licensed appraisers back on the FHA roster. And so it looks like that's going to be about a 240-day waiting period. So about March, your licensed appraisers will be able to conduct FHA work. The president on March 13th wrote an executive order that squarely put the finger on the foundation with respect to experience requirements and getting appraisers into the field. That's the first time that we've ever experienced a presidential executive order directed toward the appraisal space, especially at the foundation. So we have that, and I'm also joined with my colleague and task force member Scott DiBiasio from the Appraisal Institute, and he'll speak a little bit about the 21st Century Road to Housing Act and what that means for you folks. It'll also speak a little bit about the executive order and how that affects the state boards. But also the big ticket item is the new criteria, proposed changes to the new criteria. And one of the things that we've gathered in our interactions with state boards and state regulators, and I just was turned off the state of Montana board. I was the longest serving member. I served 17 years, of that 12 years as the chair. So I consider myself a recovering regulator as of April. So I'm just newly a member of the public anymore. One of the things that we've experienced when we talk to state boards is the universal question is, how are we going to solve this mentor process problem where when people call to say, how do I get in the business? You're like, we have to find a mentor. And then they go out and search and they get told no, no, no. And we've got to get by this theory of protectionism into our business, where the only way you can get into this profession is to know somebody. And I say if this was in a government agency, if we were a government agency, we would be engaging in nepotism, because when you ask people how they got in the business, my dad was an appraiser, my mother was an appraiser, my sister, my brother. I'm guilty. My sister, my nephew are 2 of my employees. But I have so much faith in the PREA process and how well these kids are getting educated and how well they're performing on the national certification exam. Every single one of those folks that have passed that exam on the first try that reported to us. And that's a testament to how well that program works. My new trainee I required him to go through the PREA program because I believe in it. I think they're getting better training. And so we have to find, the problem with that is it's not at scale. They've graduated, and Scott will talk about this because it's their program. We have to do something more at scale to get people into the business. And so that's what the AQB is looking at, is what can we do to overcome this barrier to entry of trying to find a supervisor to get people in it. It's very difficult to manage a crisis when you're in the middle of a crisis. So in South Carolina, we're trying to gather renewal information now from states to see if our 15 to 20% prediction is correct on people retiring. In South Carolina, they lost 300 appraisers. Their renewal ended July 31st. 300 appraisers didn't renew. They just retired because they weren't going to do the new work with the new form. And so they lost 29% of their appraisers in one renewal cycle. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We have to have a way to replace these folks. And today, we're working with our task force member at the IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers, because there's a whole section of people that are working in the assessment world that have experience and that they're really suited for what the appraisal business is now, which is data analytics, AVM technology. Those folks have been doing that for 50 years. And so there's candidates that want to become appraisers that are working for government agencies. A lot of states don't allow that experience to work. And that's one of the overlays where the AQB allows 100% mass appraisal experience to count toward licensure. But there's a lot of states that either only give you 25% credit or no credit. And that's a significant barrier to entry because these people are engaged in our practice. They're actually working in the appraisal space. They're actually just applying USPAP standards 5 and 6 rather than 1 and 2. And yet we're telling them your experience doesn't matter. That makes no sense to me. And so that's what we're doing. At some of the states, we're talking to them about accepting mass appraisal experience. The AQB's taking it one step further and saying the proposal is to get into the license level that you would take the education, the exam, and then you would write 3 demonstration reports that would be approved, and then you would be licensed, not certified, only the license level to get you in the practice. So those are some of the changes. I'm going to turn this over to Randy. Randy's a fellow trustee and a colleague of mine on the Appraisal Foundation Board of Trustees. He's also on our task force. And fortunately, he's the appraiser you guy. Your question about the practicum, that's Randy's program. So you'll probably have some questions for him. So with that, I will turn it over to Randy and Scott to talk about some of this other stuff. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I want to just leave you with one other thing before I sit down. We're here to provide a resource for you. We're not a regulatory body at the foundation. We're here to set standards and criteria. And we're here as a resource. Randy will be your state liaison on our committee. So every state gets a representative from the Board of Trustees that you can communicate with as we move forward. So Randy will be at every one of your meetings, either virtually or in person, as we move forward and you have questions about the criteria change, implementation timelines, once it's approved, you have a dedicated a member of our board to communicate with. And Randy has been assigned, we've assigned him to Texas, so he'll be your guy. And we're here as a resource and here to help in any way we can, because we know this is a big change and there's a lot moving parts. And Chelsea lined that out perfectly of how many different things are happening in this appraisal space with federal legislation, the AQB, and we're here to help you folks make it through that. And so with that, I'll take a seat and we're open for any questions, but I'll have Randy talk a little bit about stuff he's going to talk about, and then Scott will come up and talk about PREA and the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. As your liaison, I want you to know that I'm here to help you any way I can. So if there's any resources you need, questions, clarification, please ask that. It doesn't mean I have the answer, but I'll work to go help get those answers for you. So I'm working right now with 6 different states, and all of them have drastically different questions depending on what their requirements are. And with all the change happening, I want you guys to hear that I'm here to help you. At the same time, as Pete mentioned, the second exposure draft does have quite a bit of changes that are wrapped up inside there. That comment period was extended to the end of this month. So there is still time for additional questions. And I think that feedback is very critical. Not only me as someone that runs a business in the appraisal space, but from someone that's looking at the entire landscape and where are we headed with technology in the future as we proceed forward. Some of the big changes, just to point out in there, is the demonstration pathway. Like Pete mentioned, that is for the licensed appraiser category. Some of the requirements around that demonstration pathway are still being sorted out. But, we run Appraisal U, and we've been running that through Missouri. I graduated 7 people in our first cohort through Missouri, and are already seeing 100% success rate on the examination through that program. I share that to say at the end of the practicum, Missouri required demonstration reports. And so I think a lot of these components that the AQB are looking at, we've already been using in our practicing processes. And so these candidates are submitting demonstration reports that they are doing in a very controlled environment. They can't have someone else write their report. They have to write it themselves, and then they have to defend that report to a board. So it's very rigorous that you have to go to prove that process. Some of the other requirements to bring up is that there's no longer, or if approved, there would be no longer a requirement for the college degree moving forward. There would be a replacement of courses through the qualifying education and the analytical areas that would replace that, and it would all relate back to real estate. Also with PREA, seeing great success with that program, it's expanding PREA for the certified general category. So right now that goes for the licensed and certified residential and looking to expand that to the certified general. Along with that, right now, they are looking at no longer putting the time requirement in place for licensing. So there's the 1,000 hours, the 1,500 hours, but removing the 6 months, the 12 months. So if you can do 1,500 hours and that's in 5 months, 5 months, go ahead and submit. If you can do that in 18 months, go ahead and submit. So the time requirement doesn't mean competence. It really is about, can you do appraisals as we proceed forward? I know myself going through the supervisor model, we have many candidates that are submitting to boards and they actually have 3,500 hours. So that 1,500 hours never been the obstacle. It's been the 12 months, and you get to 12 months and it's closer to 3,500. Beyond that, moving the examination for earlier in the process. Right now, the examination is at the end. So do your QE, get a supervisor, go through all the training, and then take the examination. Now allowing candidates to take that examination following their QE. So testing on the things that they just learned on and moving that up. Some candidates, it took 2 years to get a supervisor. Now they're going through the supervisor model. Now we're 3 years down and trying to go back and take that examination. So giving the candidate the flexibility to take that earlier. The other, there's several other things that are outlined in there, but I think another one is dropping the continuing education requirements on trainees. They're already having to take QE, and then some of these are having to come back. They're dealing with all these obstacles, and now, hey, by the way, for you to keep going with your process, you need to go take the CE. And so going ahead and dropping that and saying, hey, they're still trying to get into the industry. Let's keep them focused. Let's get them taught. Let's get them through the process, and then get them on that CE track as we proceed forward. These are high level, some of the things that I wanted to point out, but again, if anyone has any questions, would be open to discussing that further.
Nope. I think we may have a
some
question.
Yeah, we've got
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So it's 1,500 hours of education. Is that what I'm
For
hearing?
the experience hours, and that's still what it is today and approved in the state of Texas for the certified residential category.
Okay. And then I had a question. So trainees don't have to continue with the education, the qualifying education. But we have trainees that have been trainees for 15 years. And so maybe there's something about that because I don't know. I've known many that haven't. And if they have no continuing education, that's kind of a limitation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if someone's training for 15 years, there's also a limitation on what's going on with their training that we need to look at, because
Well,
it's
but
not
even 3 years.
or 3 years. Yeah,
Okay.
either way. So yeah, I think, if there's some large changes, we should be looking at, what's going on with that. But I think what we're seeing is most of the QE and the CE that's in place, it's emulated already in their qualifying education. Also with USPAP having no expiration now, that was a change, I believe, roughly a year ago. That was a lot of what the CE requirements were around.
And I understand.
And so that, I think that's playing into the element.
So this
And
is,
it's important that you comment on that. If you think that's an issue, like if somebody's in a training assignment, say for more than 4 years, where then they'd be required to trigger that. We want those comments.
right.
Some of the comments we've got is that, okay, we're okay with that, but they need to take USPAP every 2 years. So even if they're in their training assignment, they still need
And
to
I
be fresh
agree
on
with that.
USPAP. So that was one of the
I agree.
comments. Again, I don't sit on the AQB board. I don't direct them. Randy and I are both just trustees. But I've read some of the comments, and that's why we want to hear from the state boards, and that's why we extended the comment period for 30 days. If that's an issue in Texas or any other state where you think somebody's been a trainee for 12 years, we want to hear that, because that's important, because they probably should be taking QE. Maybe we cap that at a 4-year training program. If you go over that, you have to start taking continuing it. please comment on that.
Okay.
You can either do it as a board or individually, as just a practitioner. Please send those comments in. We read every one of them.
And so I have another question. So it's for licensure, not for certification. So they get their license and then they become certified through their state. Is this?
So you mean the demonstration pathway?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's only for the license category, so the lowest level category, and then there's a true pathway. Then they can work for 2 or 3 years. The proposal is without disciplinary action, take the exam, take the test, and then move up to certified residential, and then they can move up to certified general. So the idea of removing the college degree requirement is we've got a lot of certified residential appraisers that are really well qualified to do commercial work, especially in these rural states. We're not talking about appraising, like Churchill Downs or the MGM Grand. We're talking about appraising 6 and 12 unit properties in rural states where you need a general certified appraiser to do it. But if they don't have a college degree, they have no chance to move up. So this gives them a pathway of progressive work without discipline, move to the next level. They can become certified general without that college degree.
But in any city size, rural or urban, I mean, that applies for both.
Yes.
Once you pass that, then
And then you have a true career path where
Right.
you can start here at the lowest level and you can work and make money and you're in the business and then we're not even approaching talking to you guys about how to do your regulation. That's up to you. If somebody files a complaint against one of these people and they're not practicing to the minimum standards, discipline them. That's what you're here for, to protect the public trust and the public interest. What we shouldn't be doing is trying to keep people out of a profession through protectionism and through nepotism. That's what we shouldn't be doing because our industry's dying.
We are traditionally certified general, have a college degree. The public knows that. And there is some trust that comes from that. Taking that requirement away, how does that ensure the public trust? That's our whole mission.
Well,
It seems like it would erode the public trust.
I'm talking about from an education standpoint.
And can I add to just what Chair Bolton is mentioning? Because I wanted to, and please address both of them, but I wanted to also add to that, who monitors the success or failure of the changes we're making to reduce barriers? I'm all about reducing barriers in our industry, right? Because I don't want us to, be underrepresented and can't service everyone. But I want to make sure also that in that process of reducing barriers and taking different things away, training, continuous education, that sort of thing, that we're still protecting the consumer and having a high standard within our field. It's one thing to be able to pass the test and get your license, but it's another thing to be out day-to-day working with reduced requirements. And I'm a public member, so I apologize. I don't know all the fancy terms in the industry, but you see what I'm saying? It's kind of what Chair Bolton is saying also, like, how do we maintain that high quality?
Let me just comment on the notion of public trust and the way I view it as a senior regulator for all these years. And also, I think that if we don't supply enough appraisers, you asked the question earlier, are there pockets where there's not enough appraisers? How do these people get funding for a loan? They're making the biggest investment typically of their life. And somebody's giving them some money and then they're on the hook to pay that back. So if you can't supply an appraiser to them to give them a valuation for that collateral risk, that to me is a violation of public trust. If we're not doing something to put enough appraisers on the field, because what's going to happen is the people with the big bag of money, particularly Fannie and Freddie, they will get these values, these collateral values one way or another through AVMs, through hybrid appraisals, through desktop appraisals. And then you can't file a complaint against an AVM. So if that loan defaults and they try to file a complaint against the appraiser because the appraiser was bad, you can hold that appraiser accountable. Well, you can't hold an AVM accountable. They're going to get these values one way or another. And so I would also say that if we're not supplying enough practitioners in the field, and then we have boards regulate them when a complaint gets filed, then we're also violating the public trust because we're not allowing the public to have the service when they're making the biggest investment in their life, to have that collateralized and valued by a professional appraiser. And so one of the comments was, remember, these are just proposals. One of the comments was that they would leave the college degree requirement in place for the certified general and not the residential. And if you feel strong about that, please comment.
Well, and I will. I'm planning on it. I'm actually drafting it now. But what I have a concern about is that, and maybe you can speak to where the foundation is on this, but at some point, the banks are going to be confident in the AI models to say, I can just push a button, I can get a number instantly, I don't need an appraiser. And I think that's coming. I mean, and I think we're going to see a significant reduction, whatever standards are in place as a result of that. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts on that.
Well,
I think we see banks doing it today. I mean, I don't think there are banks that are already moving into that, and they've accepted that risk as a bank, and what goes along with that. I've got my doctorate in education. I was a dean at a college previously. So education is, I think, very critical as we proceed forward. I think what's super important is to look at what do we want from the education that maps back to the profession. And that's where I think a lot of the disconnect is occurring is, you know, we're not requiring a bachelor's in real estate or a bachelor's in math. You know, a lot of the things that tie back to what we want to see in an appraiser, the analytical skills, those things. And so when the AQB, I know, worked through it and they put a lot of additional reference materials out there, this is why going back to the QE, they're putting some of these math sections in place. And they're saying, we want to stay really focused on what do we believe an appraiser needs to know to do the actual appraisal. If they get a bachelor's, not to talk down on it, but let's say it's art history, you know, how does that apply to appraising? Well, they took a college algebra class. Okay, let's look at that component and how do we maybe take those things and put that back into our appraisal education as we proceed forward. And you know, I believe that there should still be ways that someone could have a bachelor's and that work for some of their QE credits. So maybe they don't need to take the math class because they took a college algebra class, some of those things, and that's still in place with the changes. So I think that's where the AQB is headed with this, and that's where they want the comments and the feedback on there. They don't want to dumb down the profession, but they want to make sure that the requirements in place map back to what the profession needs to do it and uphold public trust.
Well, you know, also I think about perception, you know, and the college degree requirement is gone. And the perception is of the appraiser being a professional. Okay, so when you to use your word, dumb down the requirements, then is that dumbing down something other than being a profession and being a professional?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at college education, I think about the critical thinking skills. That's what I believe a candidate really gains through college education, and something that should be discussed as we continue this conversation around the requirements. Going back to the analytical skills, the critical thinking skills, the things that I believe a college education provide outside of just the curriculum that you're learning. And that's something that we need to be thinking about. At the same time, with AI, we got to think about how education is evolving, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't even going to college anymore, but that doesn't mean they're not learning. They're learning differently. They're gaining that education through a lot of these online teaching programs. And so I think education's even evolving as we proceed forward. It's going to get difficult. It's going to get difficult, I think, to understand that. It's always been difficult to measure critical thinking. It's one of the hardest things to measure in education.
Right, but that's, you know, a bachelor's degree is something that people can wrap their heads around. A lot of people actually have them. And understand that this is 4 years of you being introduced to new concepts and having to critically think. And, you know, in the profession, we all know almost every appraisal's got something weird about it, some quirk that you've got to think outside the box to figure out a solution to a conclusion of value. And I think that demonstrates, or a college degree demonstrates to the public that I know how to do this because I've accomplished this task of 4 years in a bachelor's degree. And that is a demonstrative for competency.
One of the things that we do at the foundation is we have a college degree approval program that we go to we get invited to a college, and the AQB goes out there and analyzes their program, whether it's economics or business, accounting, finance, and to see if the classes marry up with the AQB required classes. And once those colleges are approved, then if you graduate with that degree, you don't have to take any of the classes to to become an appraiser because you've satisfied all those requirements of statistics. And so proudly, in our 40th anniversary of the foundation, we're going to be in Houston, Texas here in about 3 months. We'd invite everybody to come to that. We're going to honor Texas A&M University because they were our first applicant and first approved program. We have over 40 approved colleges and universities across the United States now. So we still value that. And we still are approving colleges and universities. So when people are in college, that's one problem with the appraisal profession is nobody goes to college and has opened up the curriculum book. I say that a book because I graduated in 1985. The course was a book and wasn't online. You don't open up and say, oh, in the business school, I can either take accounting, finance, marketing, or appraisal theory or real estate. So there's very few colleges and universities actually get a conferred degree in real estate. Mm-hmm. There are some. I think there's one in the Dallas area because we used to have a board member from a doctor from Dallas that went through that program, but we still value that. And we still want people to comment on that. It's just that at the lowest level, that entry level appraiser, does that require a college degree to perform relative? I mean, the definition of the licensed appraiser is non-complex assignments. They can't exceed $1 million in transaction value. I mean, these are pretty, low-level assignments, and do those people require a college degree to keep the real estate in that housing market moving? But if I was going to go to work for a Big 8 accounting firm or CBRE and I was a general certified appraiser with no college degree, I'm probably not getting hired. So there is value to it, and I understand that. And we want all those comments because that's not cast in stone. That's just a proposal.
So the program you mentioned where you're certifying universities, what is the name of that program?
The College Degree Approval Program.
Okay. And what does a college need to do in order to participate?
All they had to do is contact the Appraisal Qualification Board, and I will leave some numbers for the staff, emails that you can, and if you want them, they will send 2 representatives out from the AQB, the Appraisal Qualification Board, and they will sit down with either the dean or an administrator and go through the program.
Okay.
Classes that they want to get certified, and they'll check that off. That'll satisfy statistics. Most of them don't have USPAP, so when they come out, they have to take USPAP.
Sure.
There are a couple of colleges that actually offer the 15-hour USPAP.
Okay.
And so we just, you invite us, we come.
Okay.
We put you on the list as you graduate with that degree from that university. You don't have to take any of the QE.
Okay, I want to take you up on that. I have a couple people in mind in terms of universities that I'd like to take you up on that for Texas, in Texas.
We don't go out and seek them out. We ask for people to have recommendations. We come see you.
Yeah, so if you can let me know specifically who do I talk to, who do I coordinate that with, that would be fantastic because I want to take you up on that offer.
I will leave emails with the staff.
Thank you.
Specific contacts for that.
Thank you. Fantastic. And then how long does that program take in order to get that university approved? Is it fairly quick or, okay.
Make a site visit on site, sit down with the administration.
Okay.
Go through that.
Where you would accept those courses, okay.
On the list is approved. And so those kids that graduate those degrees can go right into the appraisal field. They can take the exam now rather than get the experience, hopefully.
Sure.
That's the problem with the exam. The national pass rate on the certification exam for first-time test takers is at a dismal 55% for certified general, 60% for certified residential, and 64% for licensed. Now, there's 3 reasons that could be. One, the exam questions may be too difficult for first-time test takers into this space. These people, licensed appraisers only have 1,000 hours experience. So maybe the exam's too difficult. The other thing is that the exam's misplaced. So we'd required them to take it after all their experience. And like Randy said, you take all your classes. Can you imagine graduating from college and taking your finals 3 years later?
Right.
That's problematic. That could be some of the reasons.
Okay.
And so that's why they're proposing shifting that after all your QE to take your certification exam and then do your experience hours.
Okay.
And so we're cognizant of that. That's either the test is too difficult or it's misplaced in where it can be taken.
Okay. The other thing, thank you for sharing that you have a doctorate in education. That really goes a long way with me.
You're the best at founding.
I know. And so as we're talking about this, thank you for sharing that because you do have an inside track on the students and graduations and what that means. Have you considered working with universities? That's a great program there where you can use some of the credits that they already have gained. Have you considered working with universities where you can actually give the students real world projects that could prepare them where they can do it as part of their coursework, and it can prepare them for being hireable when they graduate in our industry, in the appraisal industry.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is going to be picking up significantly in the coming years ahead. So we work specifically with the state of California, with LA College, that recently implemented a practicum program in that state. And so we helped provide some of our thoughts on what LA College should be doing with that. And LA College has now rolled that program out, where someone can graduate from LA College. It's a community college even. And have a license at graduation. And it's actually going through the practicum route. They do their QE on site and through labs. That's their experience that they apply. And that program is already seeing great success. They had over 200 people apply to go through that program in the first cohort. They've got people actually volunteering to fly to class each week to take the class from other states to go back, just because that's the only pathway they could get through there. So I say that to say I think practicum is going to continue to open these pathways. I mean, we are a private business and we're doing it, but I do see this funding, funneling back to the college campuses and providing those pathways.
Can you please get with me off after this? I'd like to schedule a meeting with just one-on-one with either both of you all, if that's okay.
Yes.
And I'd like to dig much deeper on how you all can partner with the universities. I think this is we as an agency cannot recruit, but I do think that will help us tremendously fill our pipeline in the state of Texas for educated folks.
There's going to be some significant opportunities with the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. So the subcommittee is sitting on a pool of money of about $45 million of grant money that is only allowed to be applied for by state regulatory boards or the Appraisal Foundation. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act opened up that money can be applied for by any nonprofit. It doesn't have to be at the state regulatory board. So colleges and universities could likely start applying for grants to open up. It's hard to go to a university and ask them to add a curriculum or a degree program because it's expensive. And so it's hard to go ask them to add that. But if there's funding available from the appraisal subcommittee, they're sitting on this big pool of money because hardly any of the states asked for it. It's been there for 10, 12 years. And hardly any of the states are asking for any of it. Well, now one of the provisions in the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is for any nonprofit. And so colleges, universities, like Randy's explaining here, could apply for that even at the community college level, where when they graduate, they're licensed, they're ready.
I love it.
And so there's this opportunity now when this bill gets rolled out for these organizations that are nonprofits, like some schools, to apply for this money and fund these programs.
Fantastic. And also, and again, I'll be quiet because I know we've got to move on, but also if you target universities that represent certain regions, for example, in Dallas, if you're looking at the southern region, who for many years has been untapped in terms of the talent we have in that region, you produce license holders within that region. They're going to serve that region. And that may be a region that's currently not being served at the capacity they need to. So anyway, I'll be quiet with that and we'll follow up with a meeting.
I love this discussion. And I would love to have this on Zoom with you because
100%.
One of our big focuses is on HBCU schools.
100%. I think it'd be great.
We are really focused on getting HBCU schools approved because of in those underserved areas like that.
Absolutely.
And so that's another one of our big focuses as well.
Thank you so much. I look forward to the conversations after.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to maybe switch gears here a little bit concerning the demonstration report path. How does 3 demonstration reports that, and please, I'm not sure that I quite understand this. Is this real world? Are these simulated appraisals? And how does that replace 1,000 hours of experience under a supervisor?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's a fair question for you to be asking. And I think Pete and I would have had the same questions that we were asking back to the AQB. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the AQB. I think a part of it was they wanted to get the exposure draft out, start hearing more opinions on it, and continue putting the guardrails around that program. That's my understanding. I don't want to speak on their behalf. But with that, I've been very vocal that there has to be strong guardrails in place around that type of pathway. And my understanding of what the pathway was created for was there's a pool of people out there that deal with different circumstances and they're still trying to find a way to get their license. So one of those could be, and these are from personal experiences that I've seen, is people have been going through the supervisor model and then all of a sudden their supervisor passed away. And they weren't able to get all the signatures they need. And so now they got to start back over at the beginning of the program. So they may have been gaining this experience, this actual experience, and they just need to go prove to somebody that they can do appraisals. That's one way. You know, another way is we see people that have been working, helping appraisers write reports for 15, 20 years, but they never gained the experience. And so do they know how to do an appraisal if they were put on the spot and try to fill one out? Could they do that? So those are a couple different scenarios. And then it turns the page to, okay, then how do we enforce it? And this is where I think if we can put somebody in a room and give them their technology, but say, I want you to do a desktop appraisal, or I want you to do a hybrid appraisal with these datas, they should be able to do a full appraisal on that. And then they should be able to go in front of the board, just like you guys, and defend that appraisal and say, here's how I got to my conclusion on value, and here's how I derive that. And if we can go through that process and truly prove that you know how to develop an appraisal and defend that appraisal, then let's discuss it.
Okay, and a follow-up to that. So whether it be practicum, PREA, or a demonstration, depending on how that works, that applicant is coming to TALCB with a passed test and fulfilling whatever requirements through those programs. And here's a certificate that says that I'm good enough. We no longer have, even though we're issuing the license, where do we audit their work? We don't get an opportunity with these programs to evaluate whether we as an agency in Texas think they're good enough.
I believe you can, though, and this is a question for your legal staff, is that I believe that if you want to put in place that they have a license that requires, that says 6 months probationary and they have to turn some reports into you, I think you can do that.
But okay,
most states can do that.
But then we run afoul of the state harmonization task force.
Not really, because they're licensed. They're actually out there working. They're producing reports. They just have to show you that they're still,
That's a fair
in
point.
your interest of protecting the public trust. They're actually practicing, but you're going to check on, they have to send you 3 reports in 3 months to look at that are actually live reports. And so you have the ability to do that, I believe. And if you don't, I think you can have rules to say that you can't.
Kat, can we create an environment where we have a probationary period?
I mean, I definitely would want to go back and look at our statutes and
Not to put you on the
confirm
spot.
specifically, you know,
Every state's different, so you
exactly. Every state's
I would
different.
you would have to research that, but there are states that do that. So if you're, let me just, Mr. Chair, let me just give you, like when Randy was giving me one of the examples. So here's one of the real struggles we have, is that when we travel to all these states, and a lot of them don't allow mass appraisal. Those people are conducting mass appraisal work. It's appraisal work, and it's directly related to our field. It's just a little different. So their experience, I mean, that would be a perfect scenario for a mass appraiser. Like in these states that don't allow it, they could take the exam, take the classes, take the exam, and then take the test. And I tell these states, and I've been telling this before the AQB came up with this, why do you care where their experience came from? If you looked at their report and reviewed it, and you're like, geez, this is actually a really good report. And then you look back and they're like, oh, the guy was a right-of-way appraiser. He was doing yellow book work that is not USPAP compliant, which the criteria says it has to be USPAP compliant. And you're like, so we're not accepting business valuers experience that are working for big 8 accounting firms that are doing high-level real estate trust valuations. None of that experience counts. Why? None of the experience for personal property, standards 7 and 8 counts. You're a high-level personal property appraiser with Sotheby's, and none of your experience counts because you want to transition into the real estate world now. You have all that appraisal experience, but none of it counts. And so we're not necessarily saying that people come and like get into this field and they have no experience. They might have all the experience in the world, but nobody's allowing it. Review appraisal experience, standard 3 and 4, you're a federal bank reviewer. That's all you do. You work for the IRS. None of that experience counts at most state boards. And so we're leaving people out that want to get into our industry that have relevant experience in a different form of the appraisal process.
I have a question, though. This is more of a supply and demand issue, but my question is you mentioned about mass appraisers, business appraisers, valuations, and personal property. Do we have an idea if they're interested in doing real estate appraisals?
Oh, yes, we do. Especially, we just spoke at the International Right-of-Way Association at their national conference in Omaha, Nebraska last month. And almost every state excludes right-of-way appraisal work. If you work with a state or federal government and you're not licensed or certified, but you're certified to do it in that state, they're excluding all that experience. And these guys are doing high-level, complex, eminent domain right-of-way appraisals, and none of that experience counts. And a lot of them want to get their license not to flood the market and get into the fee world. In Cook County, Illinois, which is the largest assessment district in the United States in Chicago, they have over 350,000 parcels and 300 appraisers. The Cook County assessor showed up at their board meeting, and he said, we just want people to get professionally designated because it's better. Number one, they get a pay bump if they come with a license or achieve a license. Number two, in appeal defense situations, they're more credible because they're licensed or certified by the state. They're held at a higher standard, more accountable. So a lot of them want to do it for professional designations. So the right-of-way industry is really honest about helping them, and they're one of our partners at the foundation. So IRWA is one of our partners. And so most of the states don't accept that. I would ask this because this is out of ignorance. Do you accept right-of-way work that's Yellow Book and not USPAP compliant? If somebody from the state of Texas, Department of Transportation came to you, would you accept that? That's the question. I don't know.
I mean, the statute says it has to be USPAP compliant, but I think you can comply with Yellow Book and USPAP.
Indeed, but because our criteria doesn't say that, a lot of the states are like, well, that's not USPAP. One of the criteria changes also is to accept international valuation standard, folks. So if you want to come from Canada, remember people on the northern border, right across I live in Montana. I'm right across the border from Lethbridge, Canada. Your experience could count if you're applying the IVSC standards.
Okay.
That's one of the proposals.
General Counsel, could you answer that question, though? We kind of left you behind. I'd like to hear your response.
Well, for that earlier one, whether it's Yellow Book, it needs to be USPAP compliant for it to count. We do have, if there is a way, there is a mechanism for our statute points to like USPAP or some equivalent standard.
Wasn't there a change several years ago? There was a placeholder that was put in to consider, for the board to consider allowing other standards.
There is something in there, but it's like I know that came up, I think, on the topic of evaluations, whether by rule we can do something. And that's like by rule, you can have a standard or can accept a standard that is equivalent, similar to USPAP. And I always thought of that as like the customary system and metric system type standard. Like they're not exactly the same, but they're similar enough. But again, this is something we'd have to definitely take a closer look at before I.
Well, certainly.
I have a question. Are these all alternative, or I guess, to be specific, the tax appraisers or a personal property appraiser, or who evaluates what works and what doesn't work as experience to gain a real estate appraisal license? Does that also include real estate brokers? I'm a developer. I know a lot about real estate. I mean, who decides that? What are the standards and what does it get you?
They've been kicking that ball around for the last 18 months, what they were calling alternative experience or additional experience. Like, should we allow home inspectors some of their time to count? Brokers. And it just got to be where, how would you quantify that? Just like,
and who would do that? Is that going to be a burden on the state agency or somebody else to determine what that is?
Yeah, and that's why I think from exposure draft 1 to 2, it's very difficult to say like, what experience would count. So that's why they went to this pathway that you would demonstrate that you can apply. So what I would leave you with, and again, I'm not here advocating for the exposure draft. I commented on it. And I was very critical about some things myself personally as a state board chair. But their notion is that we can enjoin people into the real property appraisal space that have relevant experience either in standards 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But they still have to take all of those classes that are standard 1 and 2 related. So all of their qualifying education, 100% of it's standard 1 and 2. The exam, there's no mass appraisal questions on there. There's no business value questions on there. It's all standard 1 and 2 questions. And then you're going to demonstrate through the reporting process that you can apply your education, apply what you took on the exam, and develop an appraisal and report that appraisal to the regulatory board. So their thinking is that way people with experience, I don't think there's any notion that somebody that had no idea what they were doing passed that exam. That exam is very difficult. I was an item writer on that exam for 9 years, and I know it's difficult. And the pass-fail ratio proves that. So there is that gatekeeper too. One of the things that we're up against also is the intent of FIREA. FIREA never called for experience. It called for exam only to license and certify people. And so we are getting some pressure from Congress as well. Not that that's going to influence what we're doing, because we are a private, independent, nonprofit that has congressional authority to set standards and qualifications. But the fact is that FIREA never mentioned experience. And we created that on our own. We'll own that at the foundation. We did that. And that's not saying we're going to go away from it because of that, but we're more cognizant of other people's experience being relevant to this process.
So who would review these 3 appraisal reports?
But I just had a meeting yesterday with the AQB from our Industry Advisory Council Task Force, and their proposal is to have what they would call an approved entities. So, for example, maybe the Appraisal Institute would do that, where they would apply to be an approved entity, no different than being a certified USPAP instructor. And so there's lots of review companies around. That's all they do. They could apply. But I also mentioned to them, I said, well, states are already doing this.
Yeah.
Why don't you just say you can go through an approved entity, or you can submit 3 to the state and let them do it? They're already required to do work product review under the ASC requirements. And so I said, why would you create an approved entity when you can have the states do it, that they're already doing it? Well, it might be an administrative burden for them to review 3 reports rather than 1. And I'm like, well, there's all kinds of money at the appraisal subcommittee to fund that. And so that's one of the comments, if you question about that, or you're like, you have some feelings about that where you'd want to do your own review work, I think I actually made that comment. I said, I would just assume the state of Montana review these. We'll determine. That's what we're here for, right? That's what the governor appointed you for. And so that's just a proposal on these AQB approved entities that doing the review work. My comment was the states are already doing that under the ASC policy statements. Why don't you just let them do it? It's their state.
It's
Yeah,
important.
I'd want to discuss that with staff for sure, but that makes sense to me that we have that in place, and it gives us the opportunity to see and qualify their work.
And you can do this. You can have them stand here and ask them questions.
I think it's a
You want us to approve this? Tell me how you develop that. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, one of the proposals yesterday they talked about on this call I was on was an oral interview. So say there's an AQB approved entity, is that they would do the demonstration, they would review the 3 reports, and then there would be some kind of oral, interview with that company, with that individual. Well, again, I think that's better suited for a state board to say, we're going to give this guy a license to practice in Texas. And let's just ask him a few questions.
That's not a bad idea. And I do like the state being able to do that because we are protecting our people here in the state of Texas. However, one thing you mentioned that was very important was funding. So I would like for you to give us those funding options available that would cover the cost for our agency to do that.
They don't get anybody applying for it.
So as staff takes it on to look at it and see if that's something that's even feasible, if that's what our Chair Bolton would like for the staff to do, funding needs to be a big part of that conversation on how you all will support the states to be able to do that.
That's why, as moving forward, Randy is available for you. Any documents you need, any help you need, guidance on grants from the ASC. We are here committed. We are not going away. We're committed to helping the states move forward with these.
Would you mind sending any type of funding opportunities to us so they can share with the board on what we're looking for?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
We put all these elements together, and I started off my conversation about supply and demand. And the thing about getting the supply is getting the word out, not just amongst boards or professional organizations. Sure. I have gone and recruited those universities you've outlined that have the degree programs where we can, we can fast track things, but the students don't know about it.
Indeed.
They don't.
And that's what the staff.
And that's the deal.
Speaking at universities.
I'm kind of perplexed a little bit about this because that's my thought of the goal of where the effort should be. I'm not trying to get rid of PIREA. I'm not trying to get rid of the practicum courses, but that's where things can really work. And then all these other elements of, well, we'll take and consider this, and we'll consider that, and we'll consider all those considerations go away if we get a clear path forward.
Indeed.
And that's where my mind resides. That's where my thinking resides. I understand, but right now, under exposure draft 2, everything's completely just stripped away. And it's like, I just see a great big hole here. And how's this going to happen? And how are we going to fill it? And appraisers have not done a very good job of promoting themselves.
Oh, they're the worst business
Yeah.
people in the world.
In fact, when we became regulated, that was the first thing that happened. They said, well, y'all don't know how to talk to the legislature. You don't know how to talk to the lawmakers. You don't know how to do this. You don't have a lobbyist. Where are you? And so I'm a product of the Southwest Plan and of RTC and of the .coms and every bust that we've had where we're running out of appraisers. But the market always finds a way to fill it. And I think you know what that is. That's compensation.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that hasn't been discussed here is the reason that you have a 15-year-old trainee is they've got a family, they've got to make a living, they got to take these courses, they have to expend all this money. And so it takes them a lot longer. It's reality.
Yes, it is.
I had a veteran that came and interviewed with me, just a cold walk-in. And I told him, well, I said on the board, and it's going to take you this much to do this and this. And he looked at me and goes, Mark, he says, I came in as an enlisted man in the Army. He says, in a short amount of time than when the years you quoted me, I was flying Apache helicopters.
Yeah. Right. And
That's the reality.
that is the reality.
And so, anyway, that's my part. That's my observations.
And please make these comments to they read every one of them. In fact, we have a firm called Decision Lab that categorizes all the comments by category of like, whether they're common comments, and they help the AQB sift through all that. I think we received over 300 letters, and we didn't think that was good enough, and that's why we extended for not good enough. The comments were so well structured that we extended for another 30 days because a lot of the boards didn't have time to assemble. And here we are talking in the comment period would have ended last week. And so we're given an extra 30 days so we can speak to you folks about this stuff.
Right. And
we're committed to direct engagement. And so outreach is one of our things too. So our partners are like the National Association of Realtors, the Appraisal Institute, IRWA, the right away or the RICS. And we're trying to get the word out to people, young kids, that you can become an appraiser. Like you said, it's hard. You go open the book and there's nothing to say that. So we're trying to, not only are we doing this with state boards, but we're outreaching to all of our partners, National Association of Realtors. There's a ton of brokers and real estate salespeople that would like to be appraisers, but they just can't get in the business. And so we're doing outreach too.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Anything else? I do want to give Scott 5 minutes. He's got some important stuff to tell you about the 21st Century Road to Housing Act and Korea.
Thanks for considering our questions.
And if you guys want to schedule another call, a Zoom call outside your board meeting, or a couple of you, if you want to have a committee, we're available. That's why we're here. So you just schedule it up with us through your staff, and we'll be there, and we'll answer all your questions. And if we can't, we'll track them down.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it, Rick.
Thank you, folks.
Sorry, Scott.
We're ready now.
So Chair Bolton, Vice Chair Reed Lynch, board members, good morning. It's good to see everybody. It's been a little bit since I've been here, and I see that there are some new board members. So mine is a face that you will see from time to time. But rest assured that I have been lurking in the background, watching all of your board meetings, but there really hasn't been a need for me to be here in person for the last several meetings. So consider that to be a good thing. You're heading down the right track. And one thing that Pete didn't mention is that when we go out and visit, and for those of you that don't know, I'm Scott DiBiasio. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the Appraisal Institute. And as Pete alluded to, I'm also part of the state harmonization task force. And one of the things that we do when we go out and visit with the state appraisal regulatory agencies and boards and commissions is go through all of the statutes and regulations that are in place with a fine-tooth comb, primarily to identify the overlays that Pete mentions, additional requirements that states have, that are not required by the AQB. And I did that for Texas. I went through the TALC Act. And I went through all 150 or so pages of your administrative regulations. And I have to say, both the TALC Act and the regulations are very specific, very detailed, and actually very, very good. Probably the best set of regulations that I've seen and had to go through. And I think that's due in no small part to the work that Ms. Santos and you as a board do, continuously updating your regulations and when necessary, going over to the legislature to seek statutory changes. So I just wanted to add that. I got 3 things that I want to touch on real quick. A lot of them have already been mentioned, so I won't go into a lot of detail. The first is, of course, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which is a law that went into effect back in June. It became law without the president's signature, which is something that is fairly uncommon. But he held that bill in his back pocket for the 10 days that he could. And we weren't sure if he was going to sign it or veto it. And of course, this is something that's been in the works for many, many years, and it's primarily intended to stimulate the construction of new residential units and even more so affordable residential units. So we weren't sure really up until the last minute whether he was going to sign or veto it. Fortunately, he didn't veto the bill. He didn't sign it either, but it became law then without his signature. And there are 2 appraisal-related sections, if you will, titles in that bill. The first is captioned the Appraisal Modernization Act, and the second is the Appraisal Industry Improvement Act. And I'll touch on just at a high level what each of those titles does. So the Appraisal Modernization Act does 2 things. It requires the Government Accountability Office to do a study of the feasibility, you'll get a kick out of this, the feasibility of creating a public appraisal database of all residential appraisals. This was a proposal that came out from Senator Warnock from Georgia. He thinks that it would be better for consumers to have access to that information to be able to challenge their appraisals if they don't think that they've gotten an accurate value assigned to their property. There are all kinds of problems associated with that, not the least of which is data security, privacy. There would be an exponential increase in the number of complaints being filed against appraisers. We came up with a list of probably 20 different reasons why that is not a good idea. So we went to Senator Scott from South Carolina, the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, and said, look, this is not a good idea. And we're able to convince him to actually kick that out to a study by the Government Accountability Office, which will get underway here in a month or so. And of course, all of the affected stakeholders will have the ability to provide input into that study. And we're fully expecting that the drawbacks of that public appraisal database will significantly outweigh any benefits, and that Congress will back off of the possibility of creating such a beast. So that's the first thing. The second thing could have been equally as bad. It would have codified the reconsideration of value process in very specific language. And of course, the problem with that is, and there were some things that were good there in that language, but there were a lot of things that were added that were not already part of the reconsideration of value processes that were required by the regulators, FHA, the bank regulators, and the GSEs. Senator Warnock added some things in there that we didn't think were really necessary and that would not be of benefit to appraisers. And of course, whenever you codify something, it's in the U.S. code. So you have to actually go back to Congress and have them pass another bill to be able to make any changes, to modernize this process, to add things, delete things, so on and so forth. And of course, we all know how hard it is to get a bill through Congress. It took many years to get the Appraisal Industry Improvement Act and the Appraisal Modernization Act. So what we did is, again, went to Senator Scott and said, we think it would be better if you just gave the authority to the bank regulatory agencies to be able to do this by rule and require that they collaborate in that rulemaking process. And he said, yeah, you're right. Congress should not be wading directly into this into these waters. It's something better handled by the bank regulators. So that process will be getting underway here shortly as well. The bank regulatory agencies will start writing the rules that would establish the reconsideration of value processes. So turning just quickly to the Appraisal Industry Improvement Act, not so, there's not a whole lot of substance there, to tell you the truth, other than putting the licensed appraisers back on the FHA roster. We think that may entice people to be able to come back into the profession, since all of that work was shut out to them since 2008 in the passage of the HERA Act. So we think that having that FHA work now available may serve as a way for people to come into the profession at that lowest licensed residential level. So that really is the major thing. Pete mentioned about the AAC grant funds are sitting on 30 plus million, 35, maybe a little bit more $1 million. And they don't have a very good plan on how to spend that. I recognize that you all have applied and received grants, but $35 million divided by $120,000 at a time requires a lot of projects for them to be able to fund. And quite frankly, there's only been 10 or 12 states that have applied for grants. And sooner or later, somebody's going to look at that and say, why do you have all this money? So what they did originally, the language in the bill was going to allow nonprofit organizations such as the Appraisal Institute to be able to access those funds as well, primarily for workforce development projects. But the White House actually got directly involved in that. And they said, be careful here, because if you open up the ASC grant funds to all nonprofit organizations, you may end up having to fund programs that have been challenging for appraisers in the past, like programs from the fair housing groups and other consumer organizations. So they limited the scope of that down to institutions of higher learning, and specifically included technical and vocational schools. So those entities will be able to access those funds through grants from the appraisal subcommittee. It changes the way, allows the AIIA also changes, gives the ASC authority to change the way that they charge AMC, National Registry fees, because that's what's led to them sitting on this $39 million pile of money. So, potentially the ASC will create a new formula by which AMCs will pay the National Registry fees. They're not limited just to lowering them. They could conceivably increase them as well. I don't think they will. So that's another provision in the bill. And it lastly adds a couple of new representatives to the appraisal subcommittee from USDA, the Department of Agriculture, as well as the Veterans Administration. So for the most part, those were two titles in the bill that we supported. Obviously, we were concerned with the Appraisal Modernization Act originally, but we're able to get those provisions changed. So we were more or less neutral on that that title. So that was the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. And just real quick, wanted to go through the president's executive order on promoting access to mortgage credit, because that too does have appraisal implications, some of which I think are going to impact you all potentially as regulators. So President issued this executive order on March 13th, believe it or not, Friday the 13th, at 5:01 p.m. And I don't think there is any coincidence whatsoever to each of those timelines. It was kind of interesting. I was out on the West Coast at the time, and my phone started blowing up at like 2:02. And I was like, what the heck is going on? It's Friday afternoon, and I got a call from a colleague, and he said, yeah, you might want to take a look at the president's executive order, because it's pretty serious. And quite frankly, this is the first time in a different way that the White House has taken a very specific interest in appraisal issues. Of course, the previous administration had an interest in appraisal issues for an entirely different reason. But we've really seen a very specific focus from this White House on appraisal issues. So that is something that is really, this is the first time that it's occurred in this sense. So the president's executive order does there's like 6 things. Requires that the bank regulatory agencies modernize their appraisal regulations and their guidance to expand the use of AVMs, to expand the use of hybrids and desktop appraisals, and also artificial intelligence valuation tools. So I think we're going to see a lot of proposals come out from the bank regulatory agencies in those areas, expanding the allowance for the use of AVMs, the value that can be developed by artificial intelligence. They're going to look more to hybrids and desktops and things like that, and direct the lenders to, or at least allow lenders to utilize those different types of tools. So, and the second thing in this section of the executive order, I think is probably the one that has the potential to most directly impact you all as regulators. So the bank regulatory agencies are required to take a look at simplifying appraisal regulation. Simplifying appraiser qualifications requirements. And of course, that's the responsibility of the Appraiser Qualifications Board, but I think you're going to see some more pressure being put on the AQB to further simplify the appraiser qualifications requirements. Quite frankly, I don't think that the second exposure draft or the first did anything to simplify things. I think it did just the opposite. It complicated it significantly more. So there are maybe more changes coming down the pike from the bank regulatory agencies and even from the White House, quite frankly. The White House would like to see the experience requirement eliminated entirely, and for there just to be education and exam. And I think they may put some more pressure on the AQB in relation to that. I think the second area where some pressure may be put on the AQB is in relation to the valuation bias and fair housing course requirements. Obviously, the White House is not a big fan of those requirements, so there may be some pressure put on the AQB to eliminate that. They've proposed to rein that requirement in, so it's not as onerous on appraisers, but I think that's still not going to be satisfactory to the White House, so you might see some additional pressure there. And of course, the third thing in this portion of the executive order is reducing appraisal requirements for low-risk transactions. So I think you're going to see some direction from the FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Administration, to the GSEs to expand the use and the offering of appraisal waivers. And that's unfortunate because it's going to be a significant further reduction in the amount of appraisal work. There'll be less need for appraisers, so on and so forth. Right now, the GSEs offer an appraisal waiver in about 28% of the loans that are eligible for sale to the GSEs. However, during the pandemic, that number went up to about as high as about 60%. So they could put some additional pressure on the GSEs to ramp that number of appraisal waivers up significantly. So those are the three things that the bank regulatory agencies have to do. And then there's another section that applies just to HUD and VA. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it requires FHA and the VA home loan program to try to harmonize and align their appraisal standards. There's a lot of differences between FHA and VA right now, specifically as it relates to minimum property requirements. And there's already been a lot of movement in this space. We had a meeting last week with the assistant secretary that has responsibility for the VA home loan guarantee program. And all they wanted to talk about mostly was, how can we align our property standards with the FHA. And we said, you probably want to go the other way and align your standards. How am I going to say this? take your standards and apply them to the FHA, not vice versa. And they actually agreed with that. So you're going to see some movement in the FHA and VA appraisal requirements. There's some direction to FHA and VA to further explain and differentiate between items that affect habitability and cosmetic items. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of VA loans that have been kicked out for minimum property requirement issues that were seemingly more cosmetic than they affected habitability. A hole in the wall, for example, does that affect somebody's ability to be able to inhabit that property? Probably not, but that would have been something that would have kicked that loan out, at least for additional review. So you're going to see some direction there to differentiate between habitability and cosmetic issues. And the last is, this goes along with that same thing, expanding post-closing repair flexibility. If the appraiser or the home inspector identifies that the property needs a new roof, is that a good reason to hold up closing of that loan? Probably not, but there could be some direction to the borrower at that point to replace the roof, in a certain period of time after that transaction is consummated. So anyway, that's what's in the executive order. That's what's in the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. Going to see a lot of changes coming down the pike that will affect the profession, potentially affect you all as regulators. So just stay tuned. It's going to come fast and furiously here in the coming months and years. The last thing I wanted to do was just give you a little bit of an update on PREA. So the Appraisal Institute is still the only AQB approved provider of PREA. There are a couple of other programs that are in the pipeline, but to be quite frank, those programs have been in the pipeline for quite some time, and I have my own skepticism as to whether or not they're ever going to be able to be approved. I've heard that there are some problems with those programs, and they're not nearly as rigorous as the Appraisal Institute's program. So the program is going really, really well, and is turning out some really well qualified appraisers. I'm very proud to say that of the people that have reported to us how they did on the national exam, 100% of the folks that have gone through AI PREA have passed the exam on the first attempt. And I do have to qualify that because that only includes people that have reported to us. There have been supposedly some folks that have failed the exam, but they haven't really been willing to step forward and tell us that. So there may be some folks that in fact have failed the exam after completing AI PREA. But regardless, they're probably few and far between. And for the most part, folks are passing the test successfully on the first attempt. And just in terms of numbers, and Ms. Tran reaches out to me occasionally for an update on how the program is going and for some statistics. So there are currently 242 people enrolled in both the LR and the CR program. 223 in LR and 19 in CR. And of course, the CR folks would have had to have gone through LR too because it is a sequential program. So that's why there's so few in CR right now. So 223 and 19, 242. We've had 106 graduates. And from what I understand, there have been a couple, perhaps a few folks here in Texas that have gotten licensed via PREA. So that's great. And unfortunately, I didn't look before I came down here last night to see how many folks from Texas are enrolled in the program. But I can tell you when I looked at the dispersion of the participation in what state those folks are from, Texas has continuously been at the top. And as I recall, it was in the high 20s in terms of the number of people that were enrolled at that time. And I'm assuming that number has stayed pretty steady. So yeah, 106 graduates and then the 242. The program's going really well. Everybody that has come out of the program that has wanted to do so has been able to find employment. We actually had one young lady from South Carolina. We didn't recommend this to her, but she went ahead and did it anyway. Hung out a shingle and started her own business literally the day after she finished PREA and she actually got certified eventually. She completed LR PREA and then opened her business and did 500 additional hours of experience and became certified. And from what we've been told, she is actually, her business has been very, very successful. She has been, for whatever luck she has, but she's been able to find a good client base and is doing very well. And that's true for everybody else. For the most part, that has come out of the program. They've been able to go to work for appraisal firms, for banks, AMCs, government agencies, so on and so forth. So all in all, the program is just really going well. And from our perspective, it's finally starting to make money too. So that's a good thing. And I appreciate, this board's consideration of PREA several years ago, and your embracing of the program. I know at the time there were a lot of questions, and hopefully you're satisfied with how the program is operating right now. So I know we've gone on probably way over time here, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this morning, and happy to answer any questions. Wanted to just touch on the exposure draft because I know that was a topic of extensive conversation. We have a little bit of a different perspective on some of these things. With the elimination of the college degree requirement, there needs to be other education that needs to be substituted for that. Things like critical thinking, statistics, courses that appraisers are going to use in their practice. I don't disagree that a degree in underwater basket weaving probably is not going to be beneficial in somebody's appraisal career, but there should be some secondary level education that is required of somebody that is applying for the certified residential and certified general credentials, and that education should be appraisal related in one form or fashion: economics, finance, business law, so on and so forth. And on the demonstration appraisal pathway, whoa, that's a path that is fraught with alligators, and we're not really supportive of that. And if the AQB is going to allow for somebody to just complete 3 demonstration appraisal reports, it needs to be limited only to what we refer to as the adjacent professions. Somebody that has been a broker or a salesperson, somebody that has been an assessor for many years, somebody that's worked in real estate finance, somebody that understands real estate markets and probably can self-teach themselves appraisal methods and techniques. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street is not going to be able to do 3 fully USPAP compliant appraisal reports having just completed their qualifying education. To say nothing of the fact that how are they going to access the MLS? How are they going to access software? How are they may or may not have access to public records. So it's going to be very, very difficult for somebody off the street to be able to, go out and appraise a property successfully in a USPAP compliant manner. So those are our viewpoints on the 2 biggest issues in the exposure draft. But we're not saying that the AQB should dismiss them entirely. There's got to be some guardrails put around both of those significant changes. We did a 15-page comment letter. It's available on our website if you're interested in, if you can't sleep one night, pick that up and you'll have no problem going to sleep. So,
Scott, I think you brought up a really good point, is that how do you have the resources to write the demonstration report? And, you're not going to have access to MVS, most likely, or MLS. I think that's a great point.
Yeah. And maybe that is something that these AQB approved entities could be responsible to provide to folks that are involved, in a program that they would be developed. But the AQB needs to specify that. And right now it's not clear. It just says, do 3 USPAP compliant reports, submit them to somebody. And I agree that it should probably be submitted to the state, just like, reports that are done through the supervisor trainee method. You have your peer review committee or panel or whatever it is. That's a great program. You also have your program where, somebody can submit reports halfway through the process to make sure they're on the right path. That's a great program as well. But the AQB just needs to provide a whole lot more clarity as to what the responsibilities and the duties of these AQB approved entities are. And so far, we just haven't seen that. So,
Any questions for Scott? Thank you, sir.
thank you. I appreciate it.
One thing, Scott, real quick. Are you developing Perea for certified general yet, or how is that process going?
That's another good point. So in our comment letter, we said that the idea of having certified general Perea is probably a good one, but from a provider perspective, it's going to be significantly more difficult to create a certified general Perea program. Just looking, for example, the sheer number of different property types that a general appraiser appraises. Residential is pretty cut and dry, but once you get into general, it's a little bit more difficult. So we have not yet, and probably won't for quite some time, if the AQB adopts this provision in the exposure draft, we'll certainly consider it, but no decisions have been made as to whether or not we're going to proceed with developing a certified general program. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time and look forward to the rest of the meeting.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we go back to agenda item 13, which is executive session. I don't believe we have any need for that. So we'll move to agenda item 14, discussion and possible action to proposed amendments to 22 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 159, as Kat will explain.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Kathleen Santos, Chair Bolton, board members, Kathleen Santos, General Counsel. Before you is agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action, proposed amendments to 22 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 159. And the specific provisions are listed in your materials starting on page 65. And so Ms. Reed-Lynch referenced these proposed changes earlier. I think you can kind of categorize the proposed amendments here into two buckets. One would be, those following the quadrennial rule review. We're looking at changes that are made for like readability or just kind of general cleanup and for consistency. For example, section 159.3, we are extending the date for the advisory committee to continue to exist. That corresponds with the next rule review. In 159.52, we're removing some extraneous language in light of our ability of users to make payments through our online system. And then also updates the language with our sister system, allowing users to submit information through the online process as well. And so moving on to the second bucket, I would say these are adding a little bit more clarity and building on some of the existing language and requirements, adding some substance. And a lot of these came out of the AMC working group that the board established close to 2 years ago almost. Our AMC chapter on 159, this group was tasked with looking at our rules and really fine-tuning them in a way that makes sense for regulating our AMC program. And so before you here, we are adding the definition for appraiser panel in 159.1, and in 159.4, we're adding a requirement for a specific disclaimer language to be utilized by those seeking to become registered under the Act when they're soliciting prospective panelists. And then in 159.102, we're clarifying items utilized to determine eligibility for registration. And then in 159.201, we are clarifying when AMC is considered to have made an assignment to an appraiser. And then finally, in 159.201, we're clarifying when an AMC's controlling person is subject to the Act, and also adding some language allowing the board to take action for an act relating to the business of appraisal management that warrants suspension or revocation. And so staff's recommendations is to authorize staff on behalf of the board to submit amendments to Texas Administrative Code 22 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 159 as presented for publication and public comment to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes as required for proposal. And I'm available for any questions you may have on this, on the language.
Hearing no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Chair Bolton, I move that the board approve staff's recommendations as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Move to agenda item 15, discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 Texas Administrative Code 153.5 fees.
Okay, so the proposed amendments before you here removes extraneous language for greater clarity. And this is a similar change that we're making in 159. This is just that equivalent change to the fee rule that we're making on the appraiser side. So back to cleanup and consistency. Staff's recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the board to submit amendments to 22 Texas Administrative Code Section 153.5 fees as presented for publication and public comment to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes as required for a proposal. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions? I would entertain a motion.
Chair Bolton, move the board approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We turn to agenda item 16, discussion of possible action regarding TALCB fiscal year 2027 budget, budget and financial administration policy, and investment policy. And we'll be hearing from Ms. Williams.
Good morning, Chair Bolton and Board. Renata Williams for the record. The budget materials were sent under separate covers. So we're starting out with a document that looks like this. Agenda item 16, discussion and possible action regarding the 27 draft budget, budget and financial policy, and the investment policy. As you know, the budget proposal is a 3-year, it's presented as a 3-year budget, and due to fluctuating circumstances from year to year, such as our anticipated number of licensees, the second and third year are intended to be informative and indicative of planned activity levels and will be refined as necessary during the subsequent budget cycles. The first year, labeled Proposed FY 2027, is the only year intended for adoption today. Projected 28, 29 are to be considered as a forecast. This draft of the budget was presented to the Budget Committee on July 24th, and now we're presenting it to the full board. So highlights, no additional FTEs were added this budget cycle. There is a merit allowance included in the salary and wages category. This allows each employee to receive a merit up to 3% based on their director's discretion and employee performance. Professional fees and services does include an allowance for $50,000 for contractor support and TALCB's proportionate share of the internal audit contract. There's a one-time allowance of $75,000 in the other operating expense category, and that is to account for any specific TLCB agency relocation expenses. As you all know, we are relocating to 1500 Congress next summer, and so if there are any particular expenses on behalf of the board, we have money set aside to cover that. Let's see here. Going on into our revenue overview. Total FY27 projected revenues are $2.1 million. This represents a 15.8% decrease from the 2026 budget of $2.5 million. And again, as a reminder, you know, we have that shift even in odd years based on the AMT revenue. So license fees remain our dominant revenue source. And the decline in the AMC revenue is again driven by the biennial AMC revenue cycle. So we're going from $764,000, which is the budgeted amount for 26, to $329,000 in 27, and it alternates. Expenditure overview on that page. Total expenditures, including the GR contribution, are budgeted at $2.5 million. That is a 0.7% decrease from 26. The salary and wages account for 66.2% of your budget. Essentially flat. No new FTEs were proposed. It does include the merit, but essentially it's a flat line. The personnel costs are budgeted at $503,000. Professional fees and services, as I mentioned, incorporated that $50,000 for the contractor support. And the GR contribution remains flat at the 22.5. Staffing levels, we're maintaining the same staffing, 17.2 FTEs, no new positions. Currently, we have 15.2 are filled with 2 vacancies. Well, that's not true. We just hired the 1 attorney now. So we have 1 vacancy. Trek cost share employees are 2.2 FTEs, and that's included in the packet. So you will know like how many are in exec, how many are in CRD, and how many are dedicated to TLCB. When we look at our historical revenue performance in 4 of the last 6 fiscal years, actual revenues have exceeded our projections, with FY22, overperforming by 21.68%. FY24 and 25 came modestly under budget at under 6.5% and 2.9% respectively, and that's largely attributable to the AMC renewal cycle and declining license activity in those periods. As you know, we had a decrease in trainee applications, so that affected our revenue a little bit. Our revenue projection is a conservative projection. That's our approach for FY27, and I think it is appropriate and consistent with our financial administration policies directive to estimate revenues conservatively to avoid shortfalls. Do we have any questions regarding the actual budget? Okay.
From the last draft, what adjustments have been made?
The revenue projections were refined. So we had 9 months of data to project versus having only 6 months, but the expenditures stayed the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And then moving on to the budget and financial administration policy, I did include the red line version so you can see the changes that we've made to that. A lot were just non-substantive, grammatical and typos and things like that. However, on the last page, we did make some changes to the adjustment to reserve level section. These changes came primarily from when we had our SAO audit earlier this year. So they reviewed our budget policies and they recommended some verbiage change to make some things a little more clear. So previously we had that the operations and contingency reserve account level will be set each year in conjunction with the preparation of the annual budget and may fluctuate from year to year and is contingent upon available funding. They recommended that we added more language there to make it plain and clarify. So we've added the dollar amount required to meet this reserve target is recalculated annually based on the current budget's estimated operating expenses and therefore will vary from year to year. If available funding in a given year is insufficient to reach the target, the shortfall shall be addressed. The remaining funds are considered unreserved and can be used for current or future operations. So that was a change, is basically saying the same thing, but with more words. But they felt that that was cleaner and clearer. And so we did run that by them before we put it in this policy. The budget committee accepted the changes, and so we wanted to present it to you. Any questions on the budget policy? Okay. And then moving on to the investment policy. Again, it's the red line version. You see I made some changes to some grammatical and some spacing issues. However, with this one, I do want to say that we had a joint budget committee meeting with TREC and TLCB and with the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Board. And it was basically to learn more about what our investment options were. They reviewed our policies. They felt that our policies were extremely conservative and that we were missing out on an opportunity, and that opportunity was commercial paper. And so after listening to their presentation, after speaking with their investment officer and their investment team, they gave it some guidance, and we have now included commercial paper as an authorized investment in our policy, and we'll be moving forward with that as an investment strategy. Do you have any questions?
And just to confirm that that slight adjustment was made in our behalf, but we are still quite conservative in that risk. So although it allows us to invest in other buckets so that we can increase our return, it is in a very conservative manner so that we do not take on an unnecessary risk. And Clayton, who is very much an expert on our board and on our committee, I did ask to see what his thoughts were, and he was very much in favor of that, just to be clear.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Are there any questions regarding or any additional comments regarding the investment policy? If not, staff recommends that the board move to approve the FY 2027 budget, the budget and financial administration policy, and the investment policy as presented.
I'll just make one further comment if it's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
I'll get us out of here. Don't worry. Just one comment, just for the record. The budget, you'll see there is a deficit at the end. It is intentional because we do have the reserves and we're very healthy financially. So when we budget those deficits at the end, once we look at our revenue, expenses, and the deficit, it is very much intentional. It's not something that has to happen. We are not in a bad position financially at all. We are just able to do that because we have been very good stewards.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Chair Bolton, I make a motion to approve the fiscal 2027 budget, the budget and financial administrative policy, and the investment policy as presented by staff.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe that is unanimous. So the motion passes.
Thank you for all your hard work,
No problem.
as well as the team.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Okay, so the next, we're on agenda item 17, discussion of possible action regarding possible topics for the November workshop. I might propose that we review the 2025 ASC annual report. And then we'll maybe do some of the open meetings training and about laws, industry changes. Sound good?
And do another one.
Anything else?
The practicum, just a high level, just for the public members especially that may not be as familiar.
I think that sounds fine.
I think by that time in November, we might have some more on the ASC stuff. So that's definitely on those changes.
Yeah, probably need to.
Probably need to discuss that as well.
I think those are all good topics for the workshop. Anything else? Okay, we've already been through agenda item 18, and then we move to agenda 19. The report on fiscal year 2026 internal audits.
Good morning, Chair. Me again. The FY 2026 audit. So McConnell & Jones has completed the payroll audit. It evaluated the payroll management controls and procedures. The focus area were payroll policies and procedures, as well as overtime and comp time. There were no findings in the area of payroll policy and procedures. However, there were a few findings related to overtime and comp time. Those included that the current practices didn't align with the employee handbook. The current practices did not consistently ensure director pre-approval, and the current monitoring of those controls were insufficient. Our HR director has already completed work to address those findings. He's conducted the training and is updating the handbook, which will be disseminated to staff in August. The enforcement audit that was a part of the FY26 audit is ongoing, and I do not have any additional update on that at the moment. It didn't start until June, and so they're still working through it.
Well, maybe Mr. Ripley can address that in November.
Yes. And then there was one other, the follow-up audit on open findings that was completed. There was one finding from a previous audit that was conducted in June of 2024, and it was regarding our business continuity plan testing, and that has been fully addressed.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. Report on internal audit plan for 2027.
Okay. Yes, sir. The audit committee, again, met twice during the month of July. McConnell and Jones presented the results of the risk assessment and identified areas of high risk based on the governing body members' survey responses. So the surveys that the board and the commissioners did. The result is that, one, we have to do our PFIA audit. That's one that we do every 2 years. It's a compliance audit. So that was going to be on the plan, and that's going to require 80 hours. The other audit is an audit of Acela / the Realm project, and it's an advisory audit. And this will focus on control gaps, knowledge and training gaps, system update, life cycle processes, as well as the procurement selection process and the vetting of the vendor. So they are estimating 250 hours for this engagement. And there's also a line item for the follow-up on any open audit findings requiring 11 hours, our risk assessment, internal reports, and communications. So total hours in the internal audit plan for 2027 is 370 hours for a total of $55,522.
Any questions? Okay, let's keep moving. Report on the application of the ASC grant funds, agenda item 21.
All right, the agency has submitted its year 3 continuation grant to the ESC for $120,000 for federal year. That's the federal year 2024 grant, and that has to be used for contract services related to technology enhancement, our RAMP projects to address TLCB specific enhancements to the system. And so again, that was $120,000. The agency has also submitted its year 2 continuation grant to the ESC for $200,000 for the FY26 grant to be used for contract services for our document organization contractor, tailored training for Acela, and development of a chatbot. Since 2021, we've applied for a total of $971,640, and we've received thus far $651,640, and we are pending a decision on our 2 continuation grants.
Okay, any questions?
That's really great. So they went up from 120 to 200,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. Good job, guys.
They said they had extra money.
Yeah, that's what I was asking earlier. Y'all send us those contacts. Thank you.
Okay, moving to agenda item 22, discussion of possible action regarding agenda items for future meetings. Does anybody have anything? Okay, we will reserve to fill those blanks later. Agenda item 23, discussion of possible action to schedule future meeting dates. We have November 6th set for a meeting and workshop, and tentative future meetings for February 19th, 2027 and May 14th, 2027. Does anybody have any conflicts or have any suggestions for other dates?
So that workshop is going to be the same day, right? That's
Yes.
how we.
I think that's
we
what
discussed.
we've discussed doing that. So,
Excellent. Okay.
and it is
Workshop and the,
And the meeting
and
will
the
be the
meeting.
same day.
Yeah.
so
Thursday.
all afternoon. We'll be
So
here
are
all
we
day.
planning to schedule that, have the meeting in the morning and the workshop in the afternoon, or vice versa?
I mean, you really could do either. I think.
That's traditional. That's what we do on the commission side is you just do your formal meeting and then move into the less formal workshop afterwards. It's a little bit different for you all because you've typically done it Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, but so you can do whatever you want to do, but typically the formal meeting is in the morning.
So that's a first for us.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
A long day.
it's innovation.
I love change.
I mean, I don't have any preference one way or the other. But if that's, yeah, let's just do the meeting in the morning and do workshop in the afternoon.
Where are you trying to go, Rolando?
Where am I trying to go?
Why are you fighting for that everything to be on one day? No, I'm just kidding.
I just don't want to come in.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
No.
Okay. Well, let's see, the time is now 11:09 and the meeting stands adjourned.